Welcome to the Sikh Messenger podcast series brought to you by the network of Sikh organisations. Over the next few weeks, we will be interviewing people who are engaged in addressing the issue of hate crime, be it from a policing or public policy perspective, or hearing from victims themselves. Our focus is on the implications for British Sikhs, but we will also be looking at the wider problem in general. This initiative is brought to you as part of the Catch Together Against Hate project, which is being facilitated by Galop and has been funded by the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. Your hosts for the series are Devleen, Herbaksh and Hardeep.
We're very pleased to have Billie Boyd with us today from Galop. Billie is a hate crime support worker and has been with the organisation helping clients for nearly 3 years. And in a previous incarnation was working in Tower Hamlets as a serious and violent crime caseworker. You know, we know Billie is someone that's always felt very passionate about helping victims of hate crime and supporting them through the impact it has on their lives. So welcome to our podcast, the Sikh Messenger podcast, Billie. Well, look, we just wanted to start off, ask you a bit more about your work in general. And if you could tell us a bit more about the charity. Obviously, you know, Galop is synonymous with LGBT rights, but we'd like to know a bit more about the key strands of your work, especially the work that you're involved in around sort of hate crime casework service, and how you support sort of the client base. And the things that you do.
Cool. So, brief super overview of Galop. We've set up donkeys ago. I'm not sure the exact year, but I think it was around maybe the 70s, the 80s, as an organisation by a group of lawyers who were supporting gay men who were being unfairly targeted by the police. And over the years, we've listened to the community and we've become a lot more victim focused, and after hearing the needs of what LGBT people wanted, we're now fundamentally supporting LGBT victims of violence. So the areas of work that we have are the hate crime service, the domestic violence service, and the sexual violence service. We also do a lot of kind of policy and research alongside that as well. But in terms of kind of the hate crime work and the type of work we do, it's super broad, and we like to kind of keep it that way because anytime that someone enters our service, you never know how they're going to present or the issues that they're going to have. So it's a bit unfair for us to kind of like box ourselves in. Okay. But fundamentally, it's about people making people aware of their rights and entitlements, offering them emotional support, and just being that kind of helping hand along the way in whatever part of the criminal justice process they're in, or even if they've decided to not go down the criminal justice side, if they want to maybe report something anonymously or just kind of make us aware, they just need support around something, and we'll stick with people before, during and after that process.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me that, I mean, you know, with your background as well, it sounds like, you know, you've kind of got this compassion for people. You know, it's kind of one of the sort of driving forces that makes you kind of get out of bed in the morning. You know, you kind of want to help people. Would you say your sort of life journey up until this point, I mean, we obviously mentioned your previous role in Tower Hamlets, and again, it's, you know, along a similar sort of thread, but would you say your whole life journey has kind of led you to this point, that you've always had this kind of, I guess, desire to help others? Or has it been some sort of incidents or events in your life that have led you to where you are today? So it sounds very philosophical, but I'm trying to kind of understand, trying to understand your motivations as a person.
No, I think it's kind of been a bit of both. I come from a big family. My grandma had 15 children, and
wow.
I'm Irish Catholic, old school. But and as kind of the youngest of that brood, I'm always kind of the bottom of the pecking line. So I was always helping out with the kind of other people. So that's probably ingrained in me at a young age. But growing up, like, I don't know, I've always liked people, and I enjoy meeting people, and this job allows me to do that. But in terms of kind of more professionally speaking, I almost kind of fell into it. Okay. I did some work at university, volunteering, and graduated university, and then ended up in a victim supporting role, realized how much I loved it, and then I saw this this opportunity at Galop. And as an LGBT person, you're unfortunately kind of fed this trope that, you know, when you coming out or going through being LGBT, you're going to experience hate crime, and it's kind of like passage of fire, which shouldn't be the case. But I have experienced elements of hate crime, and friends and loved ones have too. And I realised I was in this unique position of someone who has a background of supporting victims of crime, and the unique experience of being LGBT. And that's what kind of brought me into this work.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that you've kind of been a victim of hate crime yourself, and I guess, you know, that experience would be something that would help you empathise much more with sort of the victims that you're helping through the service. I guess, you know, coming from that question, is there something in the work that you've done in the last 3 years which stands out as to be one of the most sort of proud moments? I mean, it could be, for example, a conviction of somebody that you've supported, or it might be something a bit more trivial, that it might be somebody that send you a text message and say, look, Billie, you've been great and you've really helped me get through this period. Is there something that sort of stands out for you as something that you'd say that, you know, that will definitely go in my brag file?
I do actually have a brag file. Any nice things, we keep it in a Word document. No, well, it's as wishy-washy as it sounds. Any kind of just working with people and just being with them and seeing how empowered they become is just the most rewarding. There's no kind of like really, I mean, I can always say, yeah, a client got me a box of chocolates once, but no, it's just working with people, because sometimes I've got people that I'll work with for just like one-off, like on the phone, and then I've got people who I'll be working with for like a year, and it doesn't matter what kind of time period that is, just seeing them from point A to point B, and seeing them come out of this and with a massive smile on their face, because people start off in some of the worst situations, and by the end of it they're ready to take on the world, and that's the most rewarding. So that's what I'd say.
Well, I mean, that's lovely to hear. Sorry,
I was just gonna jump in and quickly ask, for those listeners who perhaps don't quite know what we mean when we say hate crime, could you just give like a brief description of what we're talking about?
Yeah. So there's loads of different definitions, and it's a bit kind of a hard to pick one. But if I was, the way I kind of describe it to clients is hate crime is it's deeply personal. It's someone who has taken time out of their day to commit a crime because of how they've perceived your identity to be, and that perception is really, really key, because you know, someone might think that I have a disability and decide to commit a crime against me because of that. I don't have a disability, but they perceive me to be as such. Likewise with LGBT, someone may perceive to be LGBT and go ahead and commit a crime. But it's unlike any other crime out there. It's not like having your bag stolen by an opportunistic thief. Because it is this person with this malicious intent who is zoned in on that, and is so infuriated by this idea of your existence, that they will take harm.
Yeah. And when you're working and helping these people, what do you tend to see as the most kind of common forms of hate crime that you help with?
Yeah, so with LGBT hate crime, it's any and all. We do see common themes between like neighborhood issues. Someone realizes that their neighbor might be LGBT, and then that just completely does a 180 on their interactions with that person. But also we get, we have like one-off things of people walking down the street. And the important thing as well to kind of note with hate crime that some people don't realize and I kind of, it's my fault for kind of making it as such, but it doesn't need to be on that more extreme end of violence. It can be more on the lower scale of just someone shouting at you down the street, and that kind of verbal abuse. So we do get all forms of it.
Well, I was really kind of touched by what you said earlier around empowering people, and I think that's something certainly our group needs to learn from Gallup in terms of what we're trying to take away from this project, and how we essentially like to empower the Sikh community, who generally tend to be a community that don't complain. So even if they have suffered immensely ever since 9/11, with people shouting Bin Laden at them, or Taliban, or ISIS, or whatever, they're not a community who speak loudly about it. They often there's a concept within, I guess, Sikhism that kind of promotes living in high spirits. So Jardi Gala. So even if you're being persecuted, then it's part of life, and you've got to kind of embrace it and kind of live confidently. So I think that point really kind of resonated with me, because we certainly need to empower members of our community who are sort of suffering in silence. If I may, Billie, I just want to ask you a bit about one of the reports that you've recently published. According to the report on online hate faced by LGBT communities published by Gallup, 8 in 10 LGBT people have suffered online abuse, and amongst those targeted, 5 in 10 have experienced online hate more than 20 times. 1 in 5 had experienced more than 100 incidents. I mean, these are pretty worrying figures, and no doubt a cause of a lot of angst amongst sort of the LGBT community. If I may ask you, what are the key recommendations from your report? And are you working with social media companies and the law enforcement agencies, for example, the police, to kind of help ameliorate this volume of online hate?
In terms of kind of social media and law enforcement, we do work incredibly closely with both. With social media, we meet them almost monthly, all different platforms, to kind of guide them around their different policies, to help them be more kind of compliant, and we also are part of kind of the monitoring reports that get kind of sent out every 6 months, just so we can have a look about how many times certain hate was recorded and actions that were taken.
Okay.
We also as an organisation have trusted flagger status with certain social media platforms, which means that if a client comes to us and says, oh, on so and so this is happening, someone said this, and this is homophobic or transphobic or whatever, they can come to us, and because we have this status, when we report it's taken, we can help them take that down. But also in terms of kind of like law enforcement and things like that, we do have a lot of clients reporting online hate to us, and we can kind of be that kind of middleman between any kind of form of law enforcement, so the police, whether they want this reported anonymously or to kind of help follow through. Likewise as well, we work quite closely with the Law Commission as well about guidance with hate. So we do a fair amount, but in terms of recommendations that we've made with this report, well, I'll read a couple out to you, but also you can access it on our website, galop.org.uk, and you'll see all of our reports there with the recommendations. But what we've kind of said in our report is that first and foremost, we want increased guidance on where and how victims can report online hate content. People kind of think, oh, I was on Facebook and someone said anything, it's just online, I don't really need to report that, and they don't really understand how or what that could mean. We also need a review of existing legislation and its effectiveness in combating online hate crime. And that again comes back to the fact that the internet has just kind of shut off, and it feels like all these statutory agencies are almost kind of playing catch up to try and keep a lid on it. We need an increase in special support and services for people impacted by online anti-LGBT abuse. We need a faster and improved police response to investigating online anti-LGBT hate speech and crime. And the last two are that we need a proactive response from social media companies to combat online anti-LGBT hate speech and crime. And most importantly as well, we need regulation that values free speech, but also ensuring the removal of unacceptable hate speech. And that's kind of a fine line that does need to be drawn in the sand.
Yeah, that last point especially really is important.
Absolutely, and it sounds like you're working at this from a number of different sort of levels, around sort of reviewing sort of legislation, to kind of working on sort of a kind of a speedier or more appropriate police response, if you like, to online abuse. But I think the point that you make about free speech is very important, because obviously people are entitled to have opinions, however abhorrent or disgraceful they may be. But there's a fine line between expressing an opinion and then inciting hatred towards a protected group. And I think that would be sort of the legislation that one of the sets of legislation that people would refer to would be the Public Order Act and the clause for freedom of expression under that legislation.
I was just going to say that the recommendations that were made in your report, all of them were really valid points, and I think they're also points that other communities can take and actually apply to their own community and say, look, we've also experienced these kind of sad events, let's try and help in these ways. So yeah, your points are really good. We've really enjoyed being a part of the Catch campaign so far. For those listening who don't maybe know what the Catch group is, it's a group of charities that works to end hate crime, mainly in London. They're there to give specialist advice and to help people targeted with violence, abuse or harassment because of their race, religion, disability, sexuality or gender identity. Yeah, so from a personal perspective, it's been amazing learning how to develop a campaign, just learning more about hate crime. In an ideal scenario, what does a good outcome look like for you when this project does end?
A good outcome for us is people taking what they need from it and being able to develop their own tools and resources. The whole point is to empower our communities. That is it, and it seems like that's happening. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know how much you know about the Sikh community specifically, but what do you think that we can learn from Galop's expertise in this area? Two very different communities, but I think there are a lot of overlaps in terms of the discrimination that's faced.
I think there is definitely some overlaps, as is across all other communities. However, I think it would be wrong for me to kind of say this is what you can learn from us. That the way that we deal with the LGBT community is going to be completely different from how people deal with other your own communities and everyone else's. And it's so important that it's any approach you take is community led. So instead of kind of me sitting here and telling you what's worked for us, just kind of doing exactly what you're doing now, listening to people and developing your own unique approaches, because that's going to be the best tactic.
Yeah, completely. And I'm sure that there are many organisations out there who would like to get involved. Do you have any specific plans for this? And also, do you think that the project is going to run again in the future?
At the minute, absolutely cannot comment on it, just because of everything that's happened this year. But if we could, I think we'd really love to.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we've personally benefited a huge amount from the campaign, and we feel a lot better equipped to help our community and help them, speak up and kind of report and hopefully reduce the amount of hate crime that we face. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for having me on, and it's been really awesome.
Yeah, it's been really lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Billie. And really appreciate your time, and look forward to speaking to you again.
If you would like to find out more about Galop and the work that they do, you can visit their website galop.org.uk, where you can also find resources and access to their helplines. To find out more about the Catch Together Against Hate group, visit catch-hatecrime.org.uk. Thank you for listening.